They say China is the world's second largest economy, worth more than $16 trillion. A miracle story of unstoppable growth. A nation that rose from famine to skyscrapers in just one generation. But what if I told you this miracle is built on lies? Behind the glittering skyline lies a foundation of debt, manipulation, and silence. From inflated GDP numbers to ghost cities, vanishing data, censored economists, and a population crisis, the Chinese empire may be nothing more than a ticking time bomb. This isn't speculation, this isn't fiction. This is the hidden reality. Beijing doesn't want the world to see this. Welcome to Crumble of Kings, the channel where we expose the lies, the power, and the downfall of nations. If you thought the world was stable, think again. For decades, the Chinese Communist Party has told a simple story. Growth, prosperity, progress. Each year, the economy expands 6%, 7%, sometimes even 10%. Always steady, always certain, almost too perfect. And that's because it is happening in paper. Independent economists have long suspected that China's GDP numbers are manipulated. In an economy this massive, natural fluctuations are unavoidable. Markets boom and bust, factories thrive, then slow. Demand rises, then collapses. But not in Beijing's reports here. Growth is always smooth, always aligned with government targets, always politically convenient. Even former Premier Li Keqiang himself admitted he didn't trust China's GDP figures. Instead, he relied on three things the government couldn't easily fake: electricity consumption, rail freight volume, bank. Blending together, these became known as the Li Keqiang Index, a shadow measure of reality. And time and again, it revealed the truth. The official numbers were inflated. But don't just take his word for it. In 2019, researchers used satellite imagery of nighttime lights, a trusted proxy for real economic activity. Their findings: authoritarian regimes, including China, were overstating GDP by 30 to 35%. Think about that. Nearly a third of China's miracle growth might exist only on paper. And it's not just growth. Beijing has been caught manipulating other statistics. Unemployment numbers vanish. Land sales data disappears. Even soy sauce output reports were pulled offline when they painted the wrong picture. Whenever the truth becomes inconvenient, it is erased. But the cracks in the facade can't always be hidden. Because while the numbers shine, the streets of China tell a very different story. On paper, China looks wealthy. In reality, it is drowning in debt. Officially, the debt-to-GDP ratio looks manageable. But unofficial estimates reveal something darker: more than $50 trillion in hidden liabilities. Where is this mountain of debt buried? In local governments borrowing recklessly to fund vanity projects, bridges to nowhere, stadiums without teams, airports without flights, and shadow banks operating in the shadows, making risky loans with no oversight. In state-owned enterprises, massive corporations kept alive not by profit, but by endless bailouts and subsidies. This is not wealth. This is a pyramid scheme where each loan covers the last dot, and eventually, it collapses. The first big crack came in 2021 with Evergrande. Once China's largest property developer, Evergrande borrowed billions to build cities of concrete shells. They promised homes to millions of families. They took deposits, they sold dreams. But those dreams were never delivered. When the bubble popped, Evergrande couldn't pay its $300 billion debt. Construction sites froze. Families lost their life savings. Protesters took to the streets, demanding justice only to be silenced by police. And Evergrande was just the beginning. Country Garden, Sunak Kaisa, Greenland Holdings, one by one. China's property giants are collapsing under the same weight. The property sector once made up nearly 30% of China's GDP. Today, it's rotting. Unfinished apartments litter the landscape. Ghostly towers stand silent. Ordinary families who thought home ownership was their ticket to security are left with nothing but debt. This is not stability. This is collapse disguised as growth. If you want to see China's illusion with your own eyes, look no further than its ghost cities: towering skyscrapers, glittering malls, 6-lane highways. But there's one thing missing: people. Entire megacities like Kangbashi in Inner Mongolia or parts of Gengo were built not to house citizens, but to satisfy government growth targets. Every apartment completed, boost to GDP. Every mall opened, boost to GDP. Every highway paved, boost to GDP. Whether anyone used them or not, didn't matter. These cities became monuments to a system chasing numbers, not reality. Imagine walking through a shopping mall with 200 stores, and only 2 are open. Imagine driving down a highway with 6 lanes, and seeing only 1 car. That is the reality of China's ghost cities. They are not centers of life. They are graveyards of illusions. For decades, China's real lifeline wasn't domestic demand, was exports. Cheap goods flooded the world. Made in China became the global standard. From smartphones to steel, from plastics to pharmaceuticals, China supplied it all. But what happens when the world stops buying? Trade wars, tariffs, sanctions, a slowing global economy. One by one, China's lifelines are being choked. Factories once humming 24/7 now sit idle. Production lines slow. Orders vanish, and the human cost is devastating. Officially, youth unemployment hovers around 21%, but independent estimates suggest the real number may be closer to 46 to 50%. Half of China's young generation, educated but idle, ambitious but trapped. Some are hired into fake jobs on paper only. Others are forced into meaningless work simply to keep statistics alive. Economists call them the lost generation. And Beijing's response, in 2023, they stopped publishing youth unemployment data altogether. Another number erased. But perhaps China's greatest crisis is time itself. For decades, the one-child policy limited births. Families were forced to choose, generations were cut short. Now, the consequences are exploding. China's workforce is shrinking. The elderly population is surging. Birth rates are collapsing faster than anyone predicted. By 2050, China could lose hundreds of millions of workers. Its economy will be left with too many dependents and too few contributors. Pension systems will buckle. Healthcare will collapse. The so-called miracle will become a demographic nightmare. And unlike debt or trade, demographics cannot be solved with quick fixes. You cannot build new workers overnight. You cannot turn back time. China has set itself on a path it cannot escape. The world depends on China. From smartphones to steel, medicine to microchips, global supply chains run through Beijing. But what happens if the $16 trillion empire cracks? A collapse wouldn't just shatter China, it would ripple across Wall Street, Europe, Africa, South America, and beyond. Markets would crash, supply chains would break. Nations tied to China's Belt and Road Initiative could fall into chaos. Tell me in the comments, what do you think will trigger China's collapse? This is Crumble of Kings. Subscribe and uncover the truths the powerful don't want you to see.